Trigger warning. This chapter of the fantasy novel Elemental Power has scenes which could be disturbing to some listeners, particularly survivors of ritualistic abuse. This book is not for children. Listener discretion is advised. This is the free audiobook of Elemental Power. If you haven't heard the previous chapters, you'll find the link to the playlist in the description below. You can start at Chapter 1 or just pick up where you left off. Book 1. Shattered. Chapter 13. War Council. The time for crying had passed. The love of my life was in the hands of the enemy. Time to put on my big girl panties and get a plan together. We had several days of walking left before reaching the Central Lands. I wiped my tears away with the back of a hand gone numb from the cold. I felt the scratch of the ring on my cheek and resisted the urge to break into hysterics again. He wasn't dead, and he needed me. I was pleased by the scene in my tent when I stepped inside. Everyone was feasting, laughing, getting acquainted. There were enormous platters of food, gallons of wine, and to my surprise, Gable wasn't touching it. He was gulping hot tea. The others were drinking merrily, but I decided it would be best if I kept a clear head. When I'd asked for food earlier, I'd been too anxious to eat much and interrupted by Marlowe's appearance. Now my stomach was turning inside out, and I sat next to Taryn and filled a plate full. The robust conversation died down when I joined the party, the severity of my grief tempering their good humor. "We should form a plan of attack," Peta said, slamming her fist on the table. In her other hand she held a glass chalice filled with what looked like blue flames. She drank heartily. She must have been eating hot peppers. The stems and a pile of seeds littered the platter in front of her. "I may be able to help with that," Gable put in. It was disturbing to see him so unlike himself, but I was deeply appreciative of his sobriety. "Please, tell us what you know," I said. "Ambius said the fairies took him to discourage you, to try and stop you from completing your task. They probably won't kill him until they have you as well. He is being kept in the dungeons of the ancient Rune castle. I remain in contact with the sprites there. At this moment, there are fire sprites in the lanterns outside his cell, wind sprites in the air around him, water sprites in a puddle of filth in the corner, and earthworms buried just under the rocks, all listening and watching. The fairies know they're there, but are unable to attack or harm the sprites in their elemental forms. They await our arrival to act." "The worms report to me directly," Taryn said, patting me on the hand. "They have heard everything said since midday. I have a little information, but not much." "Share with us, Earth Sprite," Peta said. Taryn leaned back in his chair, putting his bulging arms across his barrel chest. "The fairies taunt him and seek information about her," he said, indicating me with a tilt of his head. "They want to know how much she understands. He refuses to speak. They have begun to torture him, but he will not give them what they want." My stomach fell. I thought that he could withstand a lot, but I felt sick knowing he was in pain, and it was all my fault. Why do they want to know how much I understand? "Because the more knowledge you have about who you are, the better equipped you are to defeat them," Gable answered. "You have the blood of the warlord flowing in your veins. You have power over them. The more you can remember about yourself, the better our chances of getting Glenn back alive." "How long will it take to get to Rune?" I asked. Marlowe answered, "We will be slower as a group, but even so we should arrive within 5 sunrises, before the time of the new moons. Darkness will be no help to us in the Central Lands. Our best hope is to come in as obviously as we can, light all around us, to protect us from being attacked before we get there. The moment your feet hit that soil, we are all in great danger, Alana." "I'm sorry to put you all through this," I said, pushing away my plate. I'd lost my appetite again. "Nonsense," Peta and Marlowe said simultaneously. They looked at each other, and Peta smiled fiercely at him. I thought he might go up in steam. She continued, "We are honored to fight by the side of the Peacebringer. My family has been at war from the beginning of the Eon. The dwarves attacked us first, fearing our power the most. We fought them back to their own lands only to find ourselves surrounded by the water dwellers, intent on destroying us. We prevailed, but the wars continued. From the day I flickered to life, I have been trained as a warrior. I have always spent my days in the company of lonely soldiers, battling against the shadow of death. To give my life for the cause of peace would be the ultimate reward. I grow tired of bloodshed. As do I, Boreas agreed. I have led armies against each of your lands. We have been consumed by war. Look at us, all four elements together at last, united in purpose. The quest has barely begun, and yet the hoped-for peace has arrived. I have taught my children that peace will happen in their lifetime, to love the other creatures of this world, and never let war destroy us again. It is an honor to be here with you, Peta, Marlowe, Taryn, Gable, and Alana. He nodded at each one of us. A wind began to swirl around him, lifting the ends of his white hair and making everyone at the table snap to attention. Boreas held up a hand, asking for silence. I heard the voice of the wind, like the rustle of leaves in the fall. Boreas smiled, nodded, and the breeze fell away and left through the tent doors. The wind sprite had paused to look my way before retreating, sneaking a peek at the chosen one, I supposed. My fellow has informed me that the fairies are worried. They did not expect us to pull together so quickly. We must decide our plan of attack. We leave at dawn, Peta said. We travel as fast as we can. When we arrive in the central lands, I will form a protective hedge of light around us whenever the darkness falls. When will you sleep? I asked. I need no sleep, she answered. I can live for months with no rest, as long as I have fuel. She lifted her flaming cup. Excellent, Taryn boomed, slamming his fist on the table and making everything on the surface jump with a noisy clang. I will sense the earth around us day and night. Nothing will tread on the dust without us knowing instantly. We will not be surprised. I will remain in contact with Glenn, sensing the waters. If the fairies do try to attack, I will wash them away. And I will race ahead of us on the wind, searching for potential traps, Boreas said. The lights flickered, the canvas walls shook, and I could swear I heard the tent say, yes. What'll I do? I asked. Gable answered, You will have the most difficult job of all. You must remember. I can help you with that. I know I may be the last person you trust, but my brother has been taken. As much as I hate to admit it, I owe him a debt. I'm afraid you have no choice but to trust me. I looked at him uncertainly. He was right. I had no other choice. I longed for Glenn. He was the only one I felt safe with. Nothing but his certain looming death would make me share so much as a cup of tea with Gable Ellenville. The memory of him, feral and vulgar, still haunted me. Even with his recent sobriety, I didn't trust him. What can you do to help me? Ambius sent you this, a gift from the mystic Zerana. It is a cordial that will force you to remember, but you will not be able to stop it once the memories begin returning. You will have to endure the pain, no matter what. Are you willing? For Glenn, I'll do anything, I answered, extending my hand palm up across the table to him. He hesitated only for a moment, a flash of some emotion on his face, but quickly hidden. He reached into his vest pocket and placed a small crystal bottle filled with black liquid into my hands. I'd like to get started if you don't mind, everyone, I said, rising from my seat and moving to stand near the door. Peta and I will share this tent. You gentlemen can share the other. Good night. I'll see you tomorrow morning. Everyone but Peta nodded and filed out silently. I wished the mess cleared away and beds prepared for us. It was early evening now. The stars were barely visible in the sky through the chimney hole, but I was anxious to do something. Even if we couldn't be moving toward him, at least I had a way to be useful. 2 beds appeared, and I moved toward one, slowing as I caught Peta's eye. She looked at me inquisitively. Is one of those meant to be mine? She asked. Yes, why? I have no need of it. I will sleep within the fire. I hadn't thought of that. Of course, I said, and the other bed vanished. Would you like me to leave you alone? She asked, staring longingly out the tent doors toward the men. There was laughter and shouting outside. They were beginning a game of some kind, killing time with civilities. I think so, yes. I'm not sure how I'll react. Unless I call you by name. Don't mind the screams. Go have fun. I strolled over to my cot, rolling the black cordial between my fingers, taking my coat off. She left me to it. I sat on the small bed, missing the enormous one the tent had provided for me and Glenn. "Oh, Glenn," I whispered, but forced the tears to remain locked up in my heart. I set the cordial on a small table next to me, pulled off my damp clothing, and slipped on my robe. The tent was learning our habits and preempting my desires. A cup of hot sweet tea appeared next to the cordial. I looked up at the tent ceiling, wishing I could call it by name. A note fell into my open hand that read, "My name is Candlewick. It's nice to meet you, Alana." "Nice to meet you, Candlewick. What's the other tent's name?" Another note read, "Cambric. He is my brother." I put down the notes and took a long sip of tea. The air was much warmer in the tent than outdoors, but it was still chilly. I looked at the cordial suspiciously. I didn't want to remember. What had come to light so far had terrified me. Everything I wanted or needed was here, or had been here. I realized that now I had nothing. I'd been happy. I'd finally found a home, but they had taken him from me. My face and my resolve hardened. I reached for the bottle, drained it, and chased it quickly with the tea, gagging with disgust at the bitterness. I took that as an indication of what I was now going to experience. I drained the tea, used the toilet, and came back to the cot. Lying down and trying to relax, I told myself it was okay. These were my memories, things I had already done and seen and heard. Nothing to be afraid of. It's only the past, right? My eyes fluttered closed and I slipped away into the revelations the fairies didn't want me to know. I was small again, in the same classroom with the same wobbly-necked teacher. There were robed figures in the class with me this time, sitting in the back row, watching. Teacher had given me a lollipop when I'd arrived, but it had tasted a little funny. Even so, I continued eating it. I wasn't looking forward to today's lesson. My hand still hurt from where he cut me last week. My parents had been ecstatic when I told them what had happened, asking all sorts of questions about what he had said. They seemed so proud that I was a princess, awed that I had seen the red eyes. They told me that they had not been able to see them, and they had to leave the special school. All their hope was in me. I was only 8. The teacher paced back and forth around the room, his hands pressed together as if in prayer. He may have actually been praying. His lips moved soundlessly. I wanted to leave, to quit. What I really wanted to do was go home and watch Punky Brewster. Instead, I was stuck here. He looked up suddenly, smiled a creepy smile, and reached me in 4 paces. "Today we play a game," he said. "What game?" He merely smiled, took me by the hand that still hurt, and pulled me into a doorway behind his desk. I'd never noticed it before. The hooded figures followed. The room was pitch black. The old man let go and pushed me inside. I fell hard on the cold floor, busting my lip. The blood welled up and I spat it out, disgusted and sobbing. I sat alone in the darkness. The others hadn't followed me inside. For some reason, that was a relief. I sat cross-legged on the floor, my hands wrapped around my shoulders, reassuring myself. I controlled my breathing like I did after a nightmare, willing myself calm again. Something crawled across my hand and I screamed, flinging it away. It hissed when it landed. Was it a snake? I hated snakes. Something began slithering up my leg and I swatted it away as well. It was cold and scaly. Another began writhing up my back. Another twisted up my arm. I screamed, shook them off, and began running wildly in circles. A voice bellowed from somewhere above me, the voice of my teacher. "Concentrate, Alana. You can make the snakes go away. Just focus your mind and send them away," he said. I stopped running. Panting and sniffling, I walked backwards with my hands behind me until I hit a solid wall. Using the bricks as strength, I focused my mind on getting rid of the snakes. "Go away, snakes. Go away. Leave me alone. Go away," I said over and over again. After several minutes of this, a bright light came on in the room. There were monarch butterflies on every surface. They were beautiful. I turned and found them resting on the wall I leaned against. I touched one. It moved its wings but didn't fly away, sending showers of sparkles all around me. "This is your reward. The butterflies are your friends. One day you will be a butterfly. But now you must endure the metamorphosis. Now you are just a girl, but in time you will be free like them," the voice said. I was so entranced by my winged friends that I didn't hear the hooded figures come up behind me. There were 2 of them, one for each arm. They lifted and hauled me back to the center of the room. A third stood behind the large metal chair they threw me into. There were wires all around it, and within it, winding out through the door. I was kicking and screaming, fighting with all my might. I managed to kick one of my captors in the stomach. He doubled over, but didn't release me. They strapped me into the chair with strips of buckled leather. They pushed a sort of helmet on my head. The butterflies were gone. A television was wheeled in front of me. The voice from above boomed again. "Watch and learn. You must find your happy place like Dorothy. Find your way over the rainbow, Alana. There is no pain there." One of the faceless hooded figures pushed play on the VCR. The movie started. It was The Wizard of Oz. I had liked the movie when I'd watched it with my parents at home, but it didn't seem so harmless now. I struggled against my bonds, but couldn't get free. Suddenly, a bucket of freezing cold water poured over me, dripping onto the black and white checkered floor. It was just like the tiles in our kitchen, I noticed. They cut my clothing off, stuck little suction cup things with wires to my chest, stomach, mouth, neck, legs, and arms. I screamed at them the entire time to let me go. I tried focusing my mind, willing them to disappear, but they wouldn't. When they finished hooking me up to the electric chair, they stepped back and watched me. I saw the tornado scene where the witch flies past Dorothy's window, feeling as if I were in the tornado myself. They nodded to each other. The most intense pain radiated throughout my entire body. I lifted up from the chair as all my muscles contracted at once. I tried to scream, but my throat was closed. The jolt stopped, and I slumped backward just as Dorothy began walking into Munchkinland. I watched, still and quiet, for a long time. Reality seemed to bend around me. I was no longer just watching the movie. It was playing on every surface, wavering in and out. The scarecrow had always frightened me. Dorothy was on the yellow brick road, passing the field, and I saw him. I whimpered. The electrifying pain happened again, worse this time. I felt my skin burn where the cups were, like when I'd touched the oven and blistered my fingertips. I couldn't keep my eyes open. My vision formed little tunnels of light that shrank into pinpricks, then all went black. I woke on the floor with my teacher and the hooded figures over me. There was a bunch of medical equipment lying there. They were giving me a shot in the arm, but I couldn't feel it. My teacher smirked and said, "You haven't found your way over the rainbow yet. Poor Lana. If you only had a brain." Then everything went black again. I woke in my cot, soaked in sweat. I was shaking violently. My muscles felt like I'd just been jolted. I was cramped and knotted, sick with pain. Those creeps had shocked me. I tried to sit up, but couldn't. The sensations were still too intense. Giving up, I fell back onto my pillow, short of breath, and very ill. "Alana?" Peta asked from somewhere near my feet. "Yes," I managed to croak. "Are you all right? You were screaming." "No," I whispered. "Memories. Torture. Wizard of Oz. No brain. Is there anything I can do?" "Try to make sure I don't die? I may not survive this. That was only one memory. It might just kill me," I said, my whispers losing force as my breath faded. I fell back into remembrance, terrified beyond description. I was in a coffin-like box, lying on my back, the lid only a handbreadth away from my nose. I was naked. I could feel the coldness of the metal on the skin of my back and bottom. It was dark in the box, but there were holes drilled so that I could see out. The screen was there, paused where Dorothy and the scarecrow go skipping down the road. I began to scream, pounding my fists on the lid of the box. The scene began to play. I settled down and watched quietly for a bit. She met the Tin Man. I always liked Tin Man. He seemed nice. When he began telling how his maker didn't give him a heart, I felt wetness lap against my back. I began to scream. The box was filling up with water. I yelled and pleaded, crying hopelessly, but no one came to help me. I took a deep breath as the water rushed over my face. I shut my eyes, and my heart began to race so fast that it felt like my chest and head were going to explode. I couldn't hold my breath anymore and opened my eyes wide to meet death. A giant monarch butterfly was above me, showing me her wings. My heart stopped beating, and my eyes shut involuntarily. I woke up on the ground in a puddle. Again, my teacher and the hooded figures were over me with medical equipment. I coughed up a lungful of water, spluttering and crying. "Find your happy place, Alana, and all this stops for you. Poor child, if you only had a heart," the wrinkled old man said. I blacked out. The next moment I was being put into my parents' station wagon, wrapped in a towel and shivering. "Why is she wet again?" my mother asked. "I cannot tell you, Beth. This is her training into the order. You were not chosen. You can never know." She shrugged, waved a friendly goodbye to him, and turned back to me. "Did you have fun, sweetie?" I smiled back, faintly remembering the fun we'd had playing Candyland and eating sweets. I couldn't wait to go back. "Yes, Mommy, I love it there," I said, feeling oddly guilty, as if I were lying about something. I came back to myself in the tent again and threw up over the side of the cot. Peta was there, ready with a basin. She smoothed back my hair and wiped my mouth, singing a sharp-sounding lullaby and toweling my face dry. I couldn't take this. My energy was drained. I felt terrible, and I had died twice tonight. "She will survive it," I heard Gable say from the doorway. "Get out," I whispered in his direction. "Get out," Peta commanded. The tent flaps closed. "He's gone, little flicker. There, precious spark. You'll be all right. It's just me. You're doing fine. Glenn needs you. You can do this for him." I was already fading. This time, I was in a cage. There were 2 buttons in front of me. One read, "Pain." The other read, "Freedom." I pressed the freedom button. A hooded figure came in, took a large bamboo cane from the wall, unlocked my cell, and hit me hard across the back. I was knocked to the floor, unable to breathe. He shut the cage, locked it, and walked away. I curled into a ball. I was naked again. Another faceless monk came in with the television. It was paused a bit further ahead. The cowardly lion's face was looking out at me from the screen. It began to play. As it played, a snake slithered up to me through the bars of my cage. I willed it to be gone like before, but it didn't leave. It was huge, yellow, and didn't look nice. Trying to ignore it, I looked at the TV again. A giant tarantula skittered across the lion's face. I screamed and watched as dozens of the hairy spiders began advancing toward me. I panicked, hit the freedom button, and planned to run out when the monk came. He didn't come. A terrible noise that made my head split in half filled the room. It agitated the spiders, and they rushed at me. The big snake didn't like the noise either. He wrapped himself around my middle while my hands were covering my ears. I was paralyzed, watching the chubby face of the lion sing. But the terrible racket was all I heard. I felt tiny stabs on my legs moving upward. The spiders were biting. My breath began to leave me. The snake was crushing my chest as he constricted. I felt fuzzy in the brain, woozy. I saw the lion laugh. I fell to my knees. Again, I woke to the monks and the medical equipment. "Pain is freedom. There is no other way," the evil teacher said. "It's a shame you have no courage." I saw the butterflies everywhere again. Why was this happening to me? If you enjoyed this chapter, please give it a like and/or a comment. And if you think someone else might enjoy the story, please share with them the first chapter. If you subscribe and turn the notification bell on, you'll be the first to know when the new chapter is released.